What's up everybody? Steve and Kush here on the MorphMarket YouTube channel. Today I'm here to show you a little bit of a tour collection. Here are my animals, some of the different rooms, some of the my favorite animals that I am working with and raising up. So stick around, I'm going to show you some cool snakes. All right, so this is the first room I'm going to show you guys some snakes from. I call this my baby room. It's not all babies. There's some raised up scrub pythons, colubrids, whatnot in here. Some animals that are kind of sub-adult size that aren't quite big enough to go into their adult cages yet. But for the most part, young animals in here. So I'm going to take out a few of these guys and show you some of my favorites in here. Here is one of the Wamena scrub pythons I produced in 2024. This girl is currently up on MorphMarket at the moment. This is one of my favorite locality types of scrub python and a very underrated one. One of the darker scrub pythons, which also then results in them having a really nice iridescent sheen, very similar to the appearance of Bolin's pythons with that iridescence. They're a very, very cool snake, very fun to keep. They get about 10 feet or so as full-grown adults, but still very slender, so not quite as unmanageable as a similar sized reticulated python, Burmese python, anaconda, etc. Another really cool aspect of these snakes is that they have a pink tongue that is pretty unique to this locality type, very pale pink coloration. That is a good way to tell them apart. And then the barred pattern down the body. They go through an ontogenic color change, not too dissimilar to a green tree python, where they start off pretty red as babies. First 2.5 years of their life, their color transitions to, or their base color I should say, transitions to either a tan, olive green, or golden coloration, with the black banding becoming higher contrast and more pronounced with age. These are my personal favorite scrub python because of the variety and the variability in their colors and patterns and the potential for line breeding that exists within this species. Their variability causes many different unique looks that I believe, and I know almost for a fact, can be refined greatly in multi-generational captive breeding. Scrub pythons do have a historic reputation of having bad attitudes, but as you can see from this baby here and the one I just had out previously, that is definitely not the case. And certainly as more generations of captive bred animals become produced, they'll become even calmer and calmer until they're, in my opinion, one of the most interactive and fun snakes to have, that have very calm attitudes and are very smart, very perceptive. This here is one of the orange Highland scrub pythons that I produced in 2023. One of my favorite locality types, probably my favorite from the southern portion of Papua New Guinea. These guys range just south of the dividing mountain range in Papua New Guinea and are known for this very brilliant orange coloration and variable pattern. This is a scrub python type that kind of eluded the hobby for a long time, but then over the last few years, myself and a couple other people have now bred them successfully in the United States. I do hope to possibly have another clutch this year in 2025. And if that is the case, you might see a baby or two of those pop up on MorphMarket come the late fall into next winter. Here is one of my red phase northern pine snakes. This lineage originates from Burlington County, New Jersey. The typical northern pine snakes that a lot of us are used to seeing are the high white northern pine snakes, which I'm a huge fan of. I have some of them in the collection. But then this is kind of the other end of the spectrum of the high red variation. These guys keep developing that red coloration as they grow into basically a black and red adult, which I'm very excited about with my pair as they grow. Pine snakes, in my opinion, or really the entire Pituophis genus, are some of the absolute best snakes to keep in the world, especially as pets. They're just super hardy, they're beautiful, they're mild-mannered, they get a pretty good size as adults. So definitely a project that I am very passionate about, something that I'm excited to work on in the future, and these red phase northern pines are one of my absolute favorites in my group. This here is a Halmahera scrub python. This is one of the smaller types of scrub python. Adults on average get about 8 feet long or so, with exceptional animals getting about 10 feet. So definitely smaller than your barnecks, your southern types and whatnot. So much more manageable for somebody who can't quite keep a 10-foot snake, but somebody who wants something that's a little bit bigger than, a ball python or a carpet python or something like that. These guys historically have been pretty difficult to establish and breed, but over the last 5 years or so, they have become more established in captivity with a handful of people successfully breeding them. So the hope is in the years to come, that becomes a much more common practice, and good captive bred Halmahera scrub pythons are going to be able to be offered to the public. This here is an axanthic Moluccan scrub python. So Moluccan scrub pythons are probably the most sought after of all the scrub pythons, for good reason, due to their beautiful coloration, and then they're also fairly uncommon in the hobby. The normal phase of the Moluccan scrub python is a brilliant gold coloration with kind of a purple tail. So the axanthic kind of takes that in the opposite direction, with a silver body with some blue hues, and then a little bit of a purple hue down by the tail. But that axanthic kind of wipes that away a little bit. Another really cool aspect is most of them have almost solid black eyes. Makes them look really, really neat. One of my absolute favorite snake species, one that I believe is one of the pinnacles of the python world, one that I hope to eventually be able to breed successfully. This is my second room, where I have some of my raised up scrub pythons, breeder colubrids, and some of my smaller adult breeder scrub pythons. You might recognize this from my podcast. This is where I do my podcast as well. It's called Kush's Corner every Wednesday night on the Trap Talk Reptile Network. These cages right here are my glorious background for those podcasts. So kind of a multi-purpose room with some of my favorite snakes in the collection. So let me take a couple of them out and show you what's up. Here is a female barneck scrub python I produced in 2022. As you can see, she is very reduced pattern. So most people, when they think of a barneck scrub python, think of a snake like the baby I showed earlier, with that kind of strong black barring down the body. But this right here is an animal that's on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. When I was first learning about scrub pythons, these reduced pattern barnecks were really the ones that caught my attention the most right up front, and I think are severely underrated in the hobby today. I really love that strong neck bar followed by a relatively patternless body with very little black pigmentation throughout the rest of it. I do have a couple babies up on MorphMarket right now that are half siblings of this one. Should grow up to look pretty similar. For anyone who is interested in these snakes, one of my absolute favorites. This here is now a barneck on the other end of that spectrum that is much more heavily patterned. This is a girl that was from my first ever clutch of scrub pythons back from 2020, and one that is going to be a breeder for me probably come next year. I absolutely love her pattern. I love how it kind of zigzags near the neck, where it's not just standard barring. It kind of has a weird, intricate, interesting pattern going on up there. So with barnecks, this is kind of why I love them so much. There's something for everybody. You can get reduced pattern, you can get highly patterned, gold base color, tan, olive green, and really everything in between. That variability is why I think these are the best scrub pythons to keep. This here is my breeder female northern Mexican pine snake. One of my absolute favorite colubrid species, one that I've been very fortunate to breed a couple of times. This female right here, to me, is one of the nicest examples of this species I've ever seen, and her babies definitely have not disappointed. That rich orange coloration, the really clean banding, and the really dark, kind of almost reddish head is a look that is really unique to this species, and one that I think is up there with my favorite appearances for these snakes. They don't get quite as big as some of the North American Pituophis like bull snakes and northern pine snakes, which makes them a bit more manageable as a pet. They do kind of start off looking like ugly ducklings. They don't nearly have this coloration when they're born, but over about the first year and a half of their life, they go through an ontogenic color change where they end up with this beautiful, vibrant, high contrast coloration. In my opinion, one of the absolute best colubrid pets out there. This room is where all the magic happens. This is my scrub python breeder room. I have most of the breeders in here, not all of them, but probably about 75% of them in this room. So all of the babies that you guys see, this is where all the magic happens. But I'm gonna take a couple of these guys out for you and show you some of my favorites. So right here is, in my opinion, one of the absolute pinnacles of my collection, and really the pinnacles of the python world. This is one of my male Moluccan scrub pythons. I think these guys are right up there with Boland's pythons when it comes to their beauty. They have essentially like Los Angeles Lakers colors. They're gold and then transition into kind of like a purplish and gold tail. Typically, these guys have very good demeanors. One physical characteristic that separates them from the other scrub pythons that is not just in color and pattern, they have generally really beefy heads, which is pretty cool, where a lot of other scrub pythons have kind of more slender, streamlined heads. This is a species that I really hope to be able to breed some point in the future. The hobby definitely needs more Moluccan scrub pythons. Thank you for checking out this video here on the MorphMarket YouTube channel, my little collection tour. If you haven't already, please go check out the podcast that MJ and I did on Friday, a little bit of a show and tell with some of the animals I have available on MorphMarket right now. And if you have already, I very much appreciate you watching that video. For me, I'm also here on YouTube. You can find me under Stephen Kush or at Kush Reptile. On Instagram, I'm at Scrub Shepherd, Facebook, Stephen Kush. And as I said earlier in the show, I host my own podcast on the Trap Talk Reptile Network every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time called Kush's Corner. If you guys could check that out, that'd be much appreciated. Again, thank you guys for tuning into this video.